Welcome to the Foxstone Financial Wealth Matters Show. This is Chris Ravsten, the founder of Foxstone Financial, and with me today is Mark Harvey, one of my good friends and a client of ours, but somebody that I've known for a great many years and have come to respect a great deal. Mark, welcome.
Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate you having me.
Well, today we're going to, we've talked about mainly investments and what we do for a living and a little bit about my son, Christian, who's the CEO of Foxstone Financial. But today what we're going to do is talk about cars. Everybody we know that cars are not an investment unless you're buying, certain specialty cars that are collector's items. But by and large, cars are an expense. And so typically most people want to buy a car that they can keep for many years or it meets their specific requirements for what they're going to do with it. For example, you don't get a Volkswagen Jetta to pull a big boat, right?
So true.
So today, Mark, what I'd like to do is have you introduce yourself, tell us your background, how many years you've been in the car business and what you've done and really what you do for people.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm glad to share that with you. I started in the automotive industry as a salesperson in 1986 in Salt Lake City, Utah. As a matter of fact, I didn't even have a car then. I used to walk to work to sell cars.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
And who were you selling for over there?
I worked for a small group called Stephen Wade, and they were a private family-owned dealership, and worked for a guy by the name of Chuck Quinn, who had previously worked for Larry Miller. And about 6 months after I started, we went to Arizona and worked for Larry Miller down there, went back and forth between Arizona and Salt Lake City. Worked for them for about 9 years. And after that, worked for Ford Motor Company through a dealer development deal. And then ended up with the Stevenson Group and worked for them for about 9 years. And then just spent 13 years with Sonic Automotive. I've been in sales.
Who's Sonic Automotive? Most people don't know that name.
Sure, absolutely. Sonic Automotive is either the fourth or fifth largest publicly traded dealership group in the country. They own about 105 stores in any given month, and they also have 12 stores under the Echo Park brand.
Oh, okay.
Which you would know that as a similar operation to CarMax.
Oh, okay.
All used cars and all one price. All guest-centric.
So they're the size of a small country financially.
Yeah. I think it's about $5 billion.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and in my career, I've had the opportunity to be in sales management, all the way up to general manager of a Mercedes store. And then I've also worked on the service side, and I've worked on the management side, corporate, working with dealerships and some consulting as well.
Well, that's a huge background. I mean, that is so varied. There's nothing that's not under your purview as far as your experience is concerned. You've done everything in the industry.
I've been very fortunate to see both sides of the sales and service side and the accounting and then the overall management side. So I'm really fortunate.
What's it like running a dealership? Because there's so many points to it.
It's a bit daunting.
Is it?
As a matter of fact, I had about 106, 107 employees in both the sales and service side and then the office. And everybody wants to know that they're appreciated, which is absolutely reasonable. So you've got a whole lot of people that you're responding to on a daily basis. Of course, you've got your guests that are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a brand, the Mercedes brand, where the guests are they like to be taken care of very well. Mm-hmm. And so that brings another level of complexity to the issue. And
more of a concierge service.
Very much so. Very much so.
You have to anticipate their needs before they may even know what they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they expect, Mercedes says, the best or nothing. I think that's a little bit over the top. The fact that if you can't afford a Mercedes-Benz, you should have nothing. I'm not quite sure that's the right message to send, but that's their message.
Okay. Well, they certainly got the best with you, so they were fortunate to have you.
Thank you.
So a big question that I get in my practice and a big question out on the street is, is buy or lease. And in your experience, who should be buying a car and who should lease a car?
That is an excellent question, Chris. It really depends on how long you're going to keep the car, what type of car you're interested in, what the use is of the car, how many miles you're going to put on it. But a good rule of thumb is if you are looking at a European car and you want a brand new European car, the only way to go is to lease it.
Regardless of the amount of miles you drive?
Well,
or is that the big caveat?
That's the big caveat. There's a lot of things that go into the equation, but most people, unless you're really doing a lot of commuting, most people can get away with a lease, even if they have to go to a 10 or 15,000 mile per year lease. 15 being the highest.
So anything above 15, it's not making any sense financially to lease.
Then you start having to do a lot of very complex calculations. Then it may make more sense to buy, but you really don't want to buy a European car and finance it for a long period of time because they become fairly expensive after the first 3 years. And
in maintenance?
In maintenance costs.
Okay.
Stopping in for a maintenance visit after the warranty period is out could be very expensive.
Clear your credit card.
Absolutely. So leasing in European cars is usually the best. Also, another time that I recommend leasing is for younger folks. Younger folks have a tendency to trade cars very frequently. Mm-hmm. They get tired of them. They're out of vogue, whatever the case may be. And
they want more of the latest technology.
Absolutely. And if they go in and they finance a car for 4 or 5 years or even 6 years, what happens is they still have that need to get out of the car in 24, 36 months. And they will do it, only they'll end up rolling a lot of negative equity or more money than the car is worth into the next purchase. And that really is a snowball.
Yeah, that's a dog chasing its tail.
Absolutely. And I've seen so many young folks get into a situation where they're just in a negative financial situation because of the choices that they made.
Yeah, okay.
So young folks leasing, I highly recommend it because the obligation is short. In terms of financing a car, if you know that you're going to buy something that you love or you've had one previously, for instance, a truck. If you're a truck person, I've got a 2012 Tundra. I knew when I bought it I was going to keep it for a very long time, not put a lot of miles on it. That's a type of vehicle that you might finance for a long period of time, get the lowest possible payment, especially in this interest rate environment, and then continue, pay it off, and keep it forever. There's no reason to do anything else unless you can afford to pay cash for it. And even then, you have to do a complex calculation with somebody like yourself to see if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Should I give up capital that I'm making, say, a 10% return on to forego financing that I could get at 2.5%?
Absolutely.
You're giving up a lot of leverage that way.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the subject of buying, because it seems to me financially, and I'd say probably the last 18 cars I've owned have been European. They've all been German, either a Porsche, Mercedes, BMWs. Now I'm into Audis. We've owned a lot of Audis. We currently own 3 of them, and I love them. To me, they're silky. This is one of my favorites, the S6. And my wife said I couldn't get it because I'm irresponsible. And it was really an interesting conversation because she's right. I mean, 2 years ago, I got 7 speeding tickets in 1 year. And those are the ones that didn't talk my way out of.
It happens.
Yeah. And, I went and drove one. It's got 450 horsepower. And it was like giving cocaine to a drug addict.
Absolutely.
And so she was right. I moved away from it and just got an A6, which has still got plenty of power, but it just does something to me. Anyway, so a lot of people forego buying a new car because the depreciation factor, especially on, it seems, European cars. They drop like a rock in the first year or two. So a lot of people want to buy a used car. What kinds of things should people do to ensure they're getting a good used car?
Okay, well, another excellent question. The first thing you have to look at is you have to look at market conditions. The biggest thing I will say about buying vehicles or leasing vehicles is at no point in history has there ever been more information available to the consumer than there is right now.
Yeah, okay, sure.
And if you're willing to do a little bit of research, you can really avoid a lot of mistakes. So in terms of purchasing a used car, right now, used cars are the highest priced relative to where they've been in the past ever. And
what does that mean?
That means that you're going to pay more for a used car at this point in time than you've ever had to do almost since the recession, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. And the industry's not exactly sure why that's taking place, but we can see the data, and we know that used cars are very expensive at the auctions. Through the retired rental car companies, they're asking more for their used cars than ever before. We also know that market share in new cars is dropping like a rock. As a matter of fact, it may go down to pre-recession levels, what's called the SAR, the seasonally adjusted rate of sales. New cars may be as low as 12, 13 million as opposed to 17 million.
That's odd to me because typically when there's a glut of product, prices go down. It softens because the supply is way over demand. And because there's such a glut of used cars out on the market, you think that their prices would be soft, but it's the other way around.
It's the other way around. There's actually a shortage of used cars.
Oh, there is.
There's a glut of new cars right now. As a matter of fact, the new car dealer inventory is at its highest point in days supply. I read an article the other day that talked about the days supply being the highest. Fiat Chrysler has the highest, and then the other domestics, and then it comes down the line through the German and the Japanese models.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. Chrysler's got a big inventory, a heavy inventory. They're one of the worst rated. You know, you look at a lot of these auto magazines and they're constantly, what are the 10 worst cars that you should own? And it's the Chrysler or the Dodge, and it's like, they can't seem to get a break. But
no, they have a hard time. They definitely have a hard time putting on a high-quality product that is in demand. As a matter of fact, their highest demand vehicle, the Jeep Wrangler, is actually starting to slow in sales, and that's been their moneymaker for a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's my 2 cars ago. I bought a BMW 750 Li, real nice car, and it was a lease return, and it was 2 years old. Well, in fact, the A8 I just traded in. It was 2 years old. The sticker on it was $92,000, 2 years before I bought it. I bought it for $48,000.
50% is usually somewhere in the 50% range is usually about the 2-year mark.
That's nuts.
It is.
That is nuts. I mean, if you figure just the shrinkage on the value, that's $37,000, $34,000, and or $44,000 in 2 years. If you just divide 44 by 2 years, 24 months.
Right.
That's $2,000 a month you've lost.
Absolutely. It is very expensive, and a great way to get into a luxury car if you cannot afford a brand new one, or if you don't even want to pay for a brand new one, as the case may be, is to go with a lease return that's a couple years old.
Yeah.
The most important thing to remember, though, if you do that, is to make sure that you purchase the manufacturer's extended service contract. A lot of people will say negative things about extended service contracts, but when they come from the manufacturer has a vested interest in selling you a very good product that covers what they say they're going to cover, and that's a good way to get into a luxury car if that's what you want. As far as purchasing a used car under other circumstances, the most important thing you can do is do your research. Spend the money on the Consumer Reports magazine or a Consumer Reports subscription. Find out about the service history of the car, the long-term results, test drive results. And then the last thing that a lot of people don't do, but is an excellent way to protect yourself, is to get a mobile inspection. There's several companies in the Denver metro area that you can call up, say that you're interested in having them inspect a car, pre-inspect a car that you're going to consider purchasing, and have them go to the dealer or the private party and have them do a full inspection on it. Two things happen. One is if the dealer or the private party tell you that they don't want to have that inspection, walk away.
Yeah, that's a warning sign.
Yeah, something's wrong. And the second thing is you may spend $150, $160 to get that inspection, and turns out that you don't want the car. You've saved thousands more than you've spent.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So those are a couple of tips for purchasing a pre-owned car.
So mobile inspection.
Mobile inspection.
Definitely worth the money if you're buying a used car.
Whether you buy it or you don't buy it, it's worth the money.
Okay, awesome. Great advice. All right, so we hear a lot of advertisements that you're getting the car at dealer's cost. In fact, is that true?
You know, it's relative. There is a act in that happened many, many years ago called Magnuson-Moss. And what Magnuson-Moss represents is the way franchisees are treated. It makes every franchisee equal. So all of your dealers are getting the cars for the same price, with a few exceptions. The cars are the same price, but they may qualify for incentives, sales contests.
Back office money.
Other things that go to larger dealers, even sometimes smaller dealers, depending on the bogeys that the manufacturer set. So, yes, you can get a car for the dealer cost. It may not reflect all of their incentives, but everybody is available to that, especially right now with an excess of new car inventory. Mm-hmm. The dealers are not interested. They'd love to make a lot of profit on the new car, but they know that the market is too competitive to do that. So they're willing to undercut each other. And it's not uncommon, and I know this sounds counterintuitive, it's not uncommon to buy a new car for less than the dealer paid for it.
I've heard that, and that's really true?
Yes, the dealer will sell it for less because in the big picture, they come out ahead because hopefully you'll have a good experience. You'll go back to that dealer in the future. You'll go to that dealer for service. In the case of Toyota, they're going to give you your first 2 years of service, your oil changes, your tire rotations at no cost. So you're going to come back to that dealer. And it's a known fact that once you establish a relationship with a dealer, you're more likely to go back there if you had a good experience. So even if the dealer loses money selling you the car, in the long run, they'll probably make it up.
Plus, don't they get some incentive for moving inventory off of the... I mean, obviously it costs them less to sell a car instead of carrying it. The finance cost of carrying the car in their inventory. So there's some incentive, but don't they also get some incentive from the factory by moving a certain number of cars?
It'll depend on how many cars are actually in the manufacturer's inventory.
Okay.
The more cars, and it really doesn't come down to just the cars, it comes all the way down to the models. So if they've got too many of one Model A, and the manufacturer will give them incentives to sell Model A, and that will incentivize them, and they'll give that money to the consumer, and then a little bit more if they've got too many cars on the lot.
Plus, the fact is that a lot of people will take their cars back and get them serviced at the dealer, and even if they don't have, like you mentioned with Toyota, a service agreement, the dealership makes money off of the service.
Absolutely.
So, to your point, if it's a good experience and they feel like they've been treated fairly, they'll go back and that's just another profit center for the dealership.
Well, let me give your viewers a little bit of the inside track here. On service profit, just the labor alone, the profit margin's about 70%. On the parts, it's about a 30% margin.
Okay.
So parts and service in a good operation far outpaces the new car sales profit.
Okay, so that brings up the big question. Should you take it back to the dealer, or should you find private mechanics that specialize in your type of car?
Well, That's very interesting and another great question, because a lot of folks think that if you go to Bob's little two-bay shop over on Colorado Boulevard, that he's going to take really good care of you. And he probably will if you need brakes, shocks, oil changes, fluid changes. That's all perfect for him. And he can get enough work because of the number of cars relative to the number of shops to keep his shop busy all the time.
Okay.
The problem is, on a brand new car or a car that's even 2 or 3 years old, the technology is so sophisticated that Bob has not been able to get trained on that, because the only training for those types of features, yaw sensors, lane departure sensors, all of that training comes from the manufacturer to the dealership technicians. And so the dealership technicians are really the best qualified to fix the car the fastest, especially if you're out of warranty. Bob, with his two-bay shop, may take on the job and look it up on the internet and try and figure out what's going on. And he may only charge $100 an hour, but it'll take him 4 or 5 hours to figure it out, where the technician at the shop can do it in 2 hours at $150 an hour, and you're dollars ahead.
Interesting. I didn't expect that answer, and that's very interesting. And I know that when I take my Audis in, I know that the mechanics there are trained by Audi and they're certified by Audi, and so I know that they've probably seen my problem before or whatever they're doing for my car. But to your point, the labor cost, I just gasp at.
Absolutely.
I mean, to change my windshield wiper, it's a 45-minute or a half-hour labor charge, but it took him 2 minutes to do it, and $80. So next question, does it make sense for someone to lease a used car?
Not any longer.
Okay.
There were leasing programs for used cars years ago, but now there are no effective leasing programs for pre-owned cars.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense. And as a matter of fact, the new car lease rates are so good and the used car prices are so high that a lease on a used car would be more than a lease on a brand new car.
Really?
Yeah, if you look at some of the advertisements right now, I think I saw something like a Corolla for $219 a month for 36 months. But a 1-year-old Corolla is going to be considerably more than that, just because the market is so hot.
Well, I can't imagine driving a Corolla for 3 years. I took my car in this morning to get a clear mask and the windows tinted, and they put me in a Jetta. And it's like, I looked in my pocket and said, "Oh, am I down to my last 50 cents? This is what I get to drive."
That's a problem with luxury car owners. I dealt with it with customers that had S classes, and then when you put them in a C class as a loaner, they were not very happy.
What
about
did I do to piss you off?
Exactly.
Whereas most people would be died and gone to heaven to drive a C-Class Mercedes.
Exactly, but you can only keep so many A6s and S-Classes in loaner fleet because they're very expensive to operate.
Yeah, even though it is a good write-off for the dealership, they're expensive.
Loaner cars are the second highest expense in a luxury dealership.
Is that right?
Behind associates.
Wow. Yep. That's interesting. Another big question, does the dealership make money off of financing if they arrange your financing?
Absolutely. Some banks will let the dealers mark up the interest rate by a few percentage points, a quarter point, a half point. It really depends on the relationship between the bank and the dealer, and also the manufacturer will have some allowances. When they don't do that, they'll have flats of 100 to whatever number the bank and the dealer have worked out. So yes, the dealer does make money on the interest rates.
So it does make sense to get qualified for a home loan or a car loan through another financing institution away from the dealership, like a bank or a credit union.
Once again, it really comes down to you doing your research. The most important thing to do is to know everything that's available to you. Okay. When it comes to new car rates, very few people are going to be able to beat the incentivized new car rates, the 1.9s, the 0.9s, all of that. The banks and the credit unions usually can't touch that.
Okay.
But when it comes to non-incentivized rates, or when the rebate in the case of domestics is really high and then it's a bank rate, it's important to do the math and get in touch with somebody like yourself to figure out, what's the best way to go.
Okay.
If people do that, they'll really save themselves a lot of money in the long run.
Okay. Next question. We see a lot of people buying cars through Costco and other car buying services. There's certain leasing companies that can get you any car you want.
Sure.
Does it really save you money by going through those entities or Costco? I mean, is it really a good deal?
I'm glad you asked that because a lot of people don't understand this fully. The only place where you can get a brand new car is from the manufacturer. And the only place that the manufacturer can sell their new cars to is to the dealer body. So, and with an exception, the rental car companies will buy through a dealer.
Okay.
And it's kind of convoluted, but for the most part. So car buying services, places like Costco, wherever, they have to get their cars from the new car dealership. So let's take an Automotive Avenues, for lack of a better word. They get their cars from Stevenson. And so Stevenson makes a little bit of profit selling them to Automotive Avenues. Automotive Avenues makes a little bit of profit selling it to you. So the ultimate consumer pays two profits.
Okay.
If you go directly to the dealer and negotiate the same rate that Automotive Avenues would buy the car from Stevenson for, you're saving one of the profits that you pay. A lot of folks will go to the wholesalers or third parties because they believe that the process is simpler, but it's only simpler because of perception.
Well, that's a good point, but I think there's probably a lot of people listening, and I've purchased a lot of cars, and there's going into a dealership and having one of these people run out on the lot because, it's kind of like walking into a snake pit.
Sure.
And this guy says, okay, that's mine. And he runs out and grabs you and starts, how you doing? What can I help you with? And what kind of car you're looking for? And what kind of payment you want? And then pretty soon he runs you in and sits down and talks to you like he's your buddy and then has you sign, you work on the numbers and the negotiation. Initial this. And, if you initial this and agree to it, then we can do it. Now, that's not quite what I want. I need more. Well, I got to run that past my manager.
Right.
So he scurries off to his manager, comes back. Okay, well, we can do this, but we can't do that. And okay, well, you're still not where I need to be. It's a laborious, really almost an insulting process, depending on the dealership you go into. Some treat you well, but most of the time you're treated like a redheaded stepchild with pimples and bad braces. So you just feel so worked, for lack of a better word.
You're absolutely correct.
So going through a Costco, even though I know I'm paying a little more profit to somebody, it's not insulting. It's like, here's the price, and tell us the options, the color, what you want, and boom, we'll deliver it.
We deserve, as an industry, that reputation because we came by it because that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But now the industry's changing because of the fact that consumers have so much more information that the average consumer will not put up with that any longer.
Yeah.
And so the dealer as a organization or as an industry has to change because the consumers expect more. So you're seeing the advent of companies like CarMax. As far as used cars go, CarMax they control 40% of the market. There's 43 million used cars sold every year. CarMax has 40% of the market, and the next highest share is somewhere around 8 or 9%.
That's 17 million cars a year.
They sell a lot.
That is mind-numbing.
Now, keep in mind that not only do they sell a lot of used cars, but they also sell them for more than anybody else. Their average profit is higher than everybody else in the industry. And the way they can do that is they make the process exactly opposite of what you just described.
Okay.
The price is fixed on the car.
Pay it or leave.
That's what it is.
Okay.
They take excellent care of you. They allow you to guide the process. You tell them, do I want to have my car appraised first? Do I want to go to this bank? Do I want to go to my bank? They let you drive the process. Echo Park, a division of Sonic Automotive, they've launched a new company. They've launched Echo Park, and now they're doing exactly the same thing, only taking it to the next level where they'll actually appraise your trade online now. So you can get all of the information you need to make a new or a pre-owned purchase prior to ever walking into the dealership. If you take a little bit of time and spend a half an hour on your computer, you can establish a relationship with somebody at the dealership ahead of time. Most people have visited 6 websites and already know what kind of car they're going to buy, so they're not going onto the lot saying, hey, what do you have to sell me? So once you know the type of car you want to buy, you've researched it, you believe that it's going to fit your family's needs. You establish a relationship with the dealership online. You work out your price. You can compare it against other dealers. By the time you've gathered all that information and you decide to go to the dealership, it's a formality. It's just signing papers.
But my impression is they don't give you a very good trade-in on your car.
Well, that again comes down to information. If you know what your car's worth, if you research it, if you look at
on a trade-in basis, not retail sales price.
No, on a trade-in basis.
People have to understand on a wholesale trade-in basis, that's the price you're going to get.
Right.
Don't expect to get a retail price.
No, and you can find out what that trade-in price is several different ways. NADA, National Automobile Dealers online, Kelley Blue Book online. You can see what cars are selling for or what people are asking retail. If you do all of that research ahead of time and you're reasonable about it, and then you submit your car for an appraisal to some of these companies, they'll do appraisals online and figure out what the value is. You can have all of the numbers before you ever walk into a dealership.
Well, the last few times I've done this, I've done all my research. I'm exhaustive. It's kind of a sport for me to search for cars, and I'll take hours and hours and hours to find the right car, do the research, figure out the wholesale cost on mine, trade-in value. And invariably, when I go in, they say, oh, it's not worth that. Well, NADA and Kelley say it is worth that in this zip code. Oh, well, it's not worth that. We can show you what they're selling at auction. And so, no, we're not going to give you 25. We're going to give you 22. And I said, well, like recently, I said, well, my car is in excellent condition. Brand new windshield. There's no dings or dents. There's no paint problems, just a quick conditioning. And you can put this car on the lot and get a very fair price for it. And, oh, no, there's no car that fits excellent. This is a good car, which is $2,000 less than excellent. So, they're working me backwards. And I find that it's so subjective because the old answer is the old adage that you can torture statistics until they get you to tell you what you want to know, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's the way I'm worked on my trade-in values. So that's just part of the game that I don't like.
Absolutely.
Because they control that end of it.
The one thing that everybody, when you're calculating, and take this into your consideration, when you're calculating everything that it takes to come up with a used car value, the one thing you don't factor in is the reconditioning cost that the dealer has to take your perfect car from perfect to the lot. And on average, a European car is going to cost, for a really good one, is going to cost somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500.
Reconditioning cost?
Reconditioning cost.
Are you serious?
Yes, because a 2-year-old car like yours, they're going to want to certify.
Right.
So just the certification fee alone could be $1,200 or $1,500 from the manufacturer. You don't ever factor that into your equation.
But doesn't the dealership get paid for that by the manufacturer?
No, they have to pay the manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
To certify the car.
Oh, wow.
So essentially what the dealer's doing is they're buying a warranty from the manufacturer that they pass along to the customer.
Okay.
And nobody ever factors that in.
Okay.
To change oil in a European car, it's going to be $150. To change the brakes, a lot of the European cars are going to need brakes after 2 years. You can't just mill the rotors like you can in a domestic. You have to replace them. That could be $1,000 right there.
Yeah.
If it needs one tire, there's another $400 or $500.
Yeah. And if it's a Quattro like my Audis, you can't replace one tire. You got to replace them all because uneven wear messes up the Quattro system and the suspension. So,
yep. So it adds up really quick. But if you do your research and you can get within a $2,000 value, you're probably doing pretty good. And if they explain and you have a relationship with the person that you're dealing with, they'll explain to you what's going on and make it make sense.
And I guess the other thing that you got to be fair about is a $2,000 difference when you're buying an $80,000 or $100,000 car and you're financing it or leasing it over a 3-year period on lease or financing it over 5 or 6 years, $2,000. Come on, it's going to make you $20, $30 difference a payment.
Absolutely.
A month. It's not going to be a deal breaker for people that can afford to make that payment.
Right. And it's not just the $80,000 car you're buying, it's the $30,000 car you're trading in.
Bingo.
So now you've got, $110,000 worth of transaction, another $4,000, $5,000 in taxes. And so it is a very small percentage.
Yeah. All right. In closing, we just have a couple of minutes left, but I think I know the answer to this. But in closing, what is the advice you would give somebody before they go in and get a car?
The number one thing I would say, and I know I'm at risk of repeating myself, is research, research, research.
That's what I assumed you were going to say.
Everything you need to make a wise decision is out there. And then contact somebody like yourself or somebody like myself. Everybody knows somebody tangentially that's in the car business. If you can get to somebody that knows somebody, it takes all of the stress out of the entire process. If you're going to spend $60,000, $70,000, $150,000 on a car, it should be a pleasurable experience. It shouldn't be like going to the dentist. No disrespect to dentists.
Yeah.
It should be fun. It should be enjoyable. And you really need somebody, you need a relationship with somebody so that they can, guide you through the process. Because most people only buy, unlike you, they don't buy 18 cars. They buy one car every 3 or 4 years, or they lease one car every 2 or 3 years. And it's not a familiar process. So do your research, find out from all of the consumer magazines what the best cars are out there, know what to expect, and then contact somebody either via the internet or by phone and set up a relationship with them and do everything before you ever step in the dealership.
Well, in defense of dentists that you said a minute ago, if dealerships would give you a good shot of nitrous oxide, laughing gas when you came in, here, puff on this thing for a few minutes, and then we're all going to be friends.
Absolutely.
You sit around and giggle and laugh at the desk and sign anything they give you. I mean, what a great experience. Maybe that's what they're doing wrong.
That might be.
Yeah, in the future, they'll probably give us a good brownie when we come in, so then we really don't care, as long as you give us something to drink and a bag of Cheetos. So, Mark, how do people get a hold of you if they want to use you to help with the car buying experience?
They're more than welcome to contact me on my cell phone, 303-263-8772. You can find me on LinkedIn under Mark Harvey. You can find me on Facebook. You can Google me. I'm available. And I'm glad to help anybody that may have a question. If you just need a referral, I'd be more than happy to give you a referral, or spend as much time as you need just answering your questions. I'm glad to do it.
And we're going to put this, your contact information on our website so people can go to Foxstone Financial and look up the blog or look up your information. We'll have that on there so that people can have reference in case they were driving or they couldn't write your information down. We'll have that available for them. And it's been a pleasure. Every time I talk to you, I just feel like I've got so much work to do to be as cool as you.
You're too kind. Thank you very much. And on behalf of my family and myself, we really appreciate everything Foxstone Financial has done for us and the way you guys have taken care of us. You're a wonderful organization, and we really appreciate your friendship.
Well, thank you so much. You've been listening and watching Foxstone Financial. Wealth matters. Buying cars is a big part of our lives, and it certainly does apply to how much wealth we accumulate or spend. And, we talk about people living their dreams, and if driving a nice car or a new car, a different car is in your realm of dreams, look up Foxstone Financial, and we'll get Mark Harvey's information online for you so you can reach out to him. I can guarantee you that you will be treated with the utmost respect, and you'll come away thinking, wow, we need more Mark Harveys in the world. Thanks. You've been listening to Foxstone Financial Wealth Matters. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.